Made it another year, 1 year older. We all survived 2021 Savage, full of mechanics none of us see coming, like the variants of COVID. And I mean, seriously, names like Delta and Omicron actually do sound like raid names. But jokes aside, Yoshi-P posted a Happy New Year message on the JP Lodestone addressed to all the players of FF14. And there's some interesting use of words here, most importantly of which hinting at our adventures after Endwalker. And don't worry, I'll cover the story without going into Endwalker spoiler territory. Anyway, Yoshi-P kicked off his letter by looking back on the official launch of Endwalker, the date of 7 December 2021, which came after a 2 weeks postponement that was announced at a player live letter. And when I think back to the moment, I can't believe we're already into the new year. In my mind, it was only yesterday we heard about the postponement. So where the hell did the time go?
That's
anyway,
so crazy.
Yoshi-P made a similar remark in his letter, saying that he's glad with Endwalker to bring the curtains down on a story arc for Hydaelyn and Zodiac. It's been a whole 11 years since he started working on Final Fantasy XIV. Reflecting on that, he said he felt that he has put everything in his career into Final Fantasy XIV. And I think it definitely shows in the game itself.
It does,
he then quickly
it does.
revisited the topic of adding data centers across all regions of the world, as well as adding new world servers. Recapping that the crazy surge of players in 2021, which was during a content drought by the way, coupled with the implications of new COVID-19 variants, also meant that his team needs a little more time to implement the new infrastructure plans, and he asked for a little more patience from the player base. The next bit is probably the most exciting bit though. Yoshi-P mentioned, as the name Endwalker implies, the story that he and his team has been working on since the dawn of Final Fantasy XIV has come to a temporary end. However, he assures players that the story of Final Fantasy XIV is far from over. His team has already started working on crafting new adventures and journeys ahead for us, the Warrior of Light, which he then purposefully corrected in his letter to say us the Adventurers, rather than the Warrior of Light. Now, for those of you who have finished Endwalker, you will know exactly why he purposefully made this distinction. Without going into spoiler territory, I read this as means of us returning back to our roots as adventurers. Remember that feeling you had when you first played A Realm Reborn for the first time and you have not even heard of the term Warrior of Light. The world was your oyster, you were a nobody seeking new sights and sounds, new adventures and companions. I totally see patch 6.1 onwards and the expansion 7.0 as palette cleansers. A soft reboot, if you will. We have been slaying primals, ping-ponging between Ascians and the Gallian Empire in terms of plot, and in my head, reading between Yoshi-P's lines here, I think the immediate road ahead will be more of a light-hearted, fun-filled journey rather than being put in world-ending scenarios. From a narrative perspective, I think that's the right call as well. Always being put in the "oh god, help us all" moment can eventually desensitize us to the grave situations. Case in point, look at World of Warcraft. We started as racers who are fighting one another on the same planet, and yet each new expansion after Legion introduced a graver and more powerful threat on a cosmic scale. You need some amazing story writing to pull off something like this. And yes, Ishikawa is an amazing story writer, but I just don't think Final Fantasy XIV needs to take that risk. They have proven themselves perfectly capable of doing more contained story writing back in the Heaven's Ward expansion. An expansion that showed you don't need a world-ending threat to make the story engaging. A soft reset will allow the narrative team to flex their muscles. For example, this gives them more room to bring in new characters that will feature heavily over the next few years maybe. Though of course, I think going forward it'll be very interesting to see who amongst the current scions will still feature heavily in our adventures. Besides, if you finish Endwalker, you will know a certain someone also dropped hints on where we are going next, and those places definitely sound aligned with what Yoshi-P is hinting at when he uses the words adventurers. Lower stakes storylines, more on the fun exploratory side of things. That is my best guess. He also included a poem for the players, which I will read the very loose translation of with some of my modifications for it to make sense. Obviously, the Japanese one will make more sense for the native speakers. In the morning of the new birth from A Realm Reborn, running across the blue skies in Heaven's Ward, liberating the land died in the Red Lotus in Stormblood, reclaiming the jet black darkness in a world full of light and Shadowbringers, and now with the next morning glow of the dawn moon behind us after Endwalker, what will the adventurers look forward to next? The content of the 4-line poem seems to point to this, and it ends there. His letter then goes on to highlight that Final Fantasy XIV has surpassed its first 10 years worth of operations, which Yoshi-P said is the first goal of modern MMOs, and his team is firmly working on the next 10 years. And he mentioned before the release of 6.1, he'll be speaking to the players about what is to come next in the next stage of Final Fantasy XIV. That honestly sounds exciting. I can't wait to hear the broader vision beyond 6.5. He also remarked that 2022 will mark his 12th year of working on Final Fantasy XIV, and he's amazed at how he will never get tired of working on this game, and yet he still remains ambitious as there's so many things he still wants to accomplish within the game, and he will continue his life's work on creating and growing Final Fantasy XIV alongside the player base. He then rounded up by saying Endwalker is a special expansion that leveraged upon 11 years of time and experience that his team has built and accumulated over those long years. And he commented that he thinks it will be quite hard to surpass Endwalker, and I honestly will also be tempering my expectations for 7.0 here. As mentioned in my review video of Endwalker, I think the expansion is a culmination of a decade worth of emotions and plots, so it's only right that we see the next expansion by itself in isolation instead of comparing it versus Endwalker.
There's so much build-up.
He wishes the player base a very happy new year and thanks everyone for their support. It's a well-written letter, but also let me take the time to talk about 3 top things I'm looking forward to in FF14 for the year. Firstly, Island Sanctuary remains the biggest feature I'm looking forward to. I was super psyched for this before Endwalker launch, and now that I've beaten the MSQs, I find my mind often wandering back to this concept. There's still a lot we don't know about it, and I can't wait for the player life letter before 6.1 for more details. If it turns out to be the farming simulator within FF14 I envision, this will honestly be my main thing within the game itself, I think. Secondly, we have so many more Savage tiers coming, and I'm really psyched to enter my first Savage raid tier at launch. At the end of the day, I still really appreciate raiding, less so in a competitive nature since I moved from World of Warcraft to FF14, but I'm still as eager as always to see the mind-blowing mechanics that Yoshi-P and team have in store for us. And thirdly, infrastructure upgrades. I know this is boring stuff to some, but I think Final Fantasy XIV has solidified its foothold as a leading MMO. It will now make sense for it to go back and refresh some of its more aging limitations. Spaghetti code permitting, of course. For example, more glamour slots. I'm seriously running low on those things. And of course, having more data centers or world servers to alleviate the queue. I know of so many players on the sidelines who can't even purchase the game yet. Fingers crossed this will happen soon. And so those are my top wishes for FF14 in the new year. How about you? What are some of the things that you're looking forward to in the game? It's the first day of the new year, so let me know in the comments below. That said, I'll be covering everything Final Fantasy XIV in the year ahead, so make sure to hit the subscribe button right here if you'd like to stay on top of the news. Lastly, if you have not seen my no spoiler Endwalker review, this video right here is a summary you are looking for. So you viewers out there have a smashing new year. A shout out to my Patreon subscribers for keeping the channel alive, and I'll see you soon.
Legend. So good.